Since the inception of touring car racing in Australia in the 1960s, one team has set itself apart from all others. The Holden Racing Team's domination over the past decade has made it one of the most successful teams ever in the Australian Touring Car Championship. In the late 1990s and the early part of this decade, HRT was almost unbeatable, winning 5 consecutive championships.
HRT was it. That's, you know, they were the benchmark, absolute benchmark in the sport for such a long period of time. I mean, from really the end of '95 through till 2002, they have been the benchmark in V8 supercars, and you know I was part of that for quite a long period, and it was pretty fantastic.
It's going to be a mobile HRT 1-2. Congratulations, Greg Murphy and Peter Brock.
It's clearly the most successful racing team in the modern era, and there's a group of people that have been so crucial to how that's evolved, and it's you know, it's a pretty special environment. They've been able to build a race team like no other that we've seen.
Mark Scaife, as he comes across the line, Scaife and Lowndes from Mobile 1 HRT. They continue their domination in '99.
Holden have had an unbroken commitment to top-level motorsport in Australia now that extends beyond 3 decades, and there's a period there where things were tough for HRT, and then all of a sudden all of the right ingredients dropped into place, and as you know, for the last little while, or long while really in many respects, they've been virtually unbeatable.
The Holden Racing Team evolved following the formation of Holden Special Vehicles in 1988, a joint venture between the Tom Walkinshaw Racing Group and General Motors. It seemed a logical step to form a touring car team to create a marketing link between the Special Vehicles division and the on-track heritage of Holden's motorsport activities.
First and foremost, it was HSV, and we had a contract with Holden's to form a special vehicles operation. And part of that contract was that when we got around to it and got HSV established, we would then like to move into a racing component as well. We were probably about 2 months into the Holden Special Vehicles activity, and Holden said, "Come on now, we want you to get some racing going." So it happened a lot earlier, and in those days we subcontracted that effort to Larry Perkins, so that was our start.
This is now the most...
As Holden Special Vehicles had its hands full getting up and running, Larry Perkins ran the race cars under the HSV banner. In their first major test, the Sandown 500, Larry Perkins and Denny Hulme showed things were on track by running the VL Commodore into second place. However, at Bathurst, the Tom Walkinshaw side of the equation stunned the locals by bringing in a car they had secretly prepared in England to run alongside the Perkins prepared car.
We wouldn't want to talk too much about the English side because that was, quite frankly, a disaster and didn't go very well at all, as they decided to prepare that car on that side of the water, and Larry did his. So Larry well and truly held up our end in that regard, but that wasn't unusual. You know, he was always going to turn out a very reliable product, so it was a little unfortunate he didn't go all the way with it.
He's going to be lucky to make it around the track.
He won't. The tyre's shredding. Look at it.
Oh, goodness me. Something's collapsed at the rear of this car.
There'll be some soul searching in that pit area, Bay, when Tom returns to the pits, if he makes it.
Oh. We got to Bathurst. We found we had 2 teams in there. There was the English team of Tom Walkinshaw's had come with a fair bit of secrecy around it, and that was full of English mechanics and engineers, at my own show, and went up to Bathurst, and I remember the performance of my own car was better than Tom's, and his entry, they had suspension failure very early on, and I remember we got well up into the race, lap 145, 150 or something, and I'm not sure whether we were leading or coming second, but we were right there, and Tom had remained in his driving suit all the race, 4 or 5 hours, and he was sort of pestering me for a drive, and Jeff Gretsch, who's up at HRT now, he was with me then as a mechanic, and we were resisting Tom wanting to drive. He was asking, could he hop in at the next pit stop? And I said, no, Denny, Hulme and I, we're just going fine, don't you worry about it. But the pressure got too much, obviously, and he was paying the bills at the end of the day, and he hopped in my car.
And Tom Walkinshaw now jumping into the Holden Special Vehicles number 10 car.
We were very conscious of the revs that you're allowed to run in my engine. We knew it had a weak link in the valve gear. in the one of the studs. And anyway, Tom was happily over-revving it in my eyes, and I'm on the radio to him saying, you gotta change it in the 5th gear up the pit straight. You can't rev it out like that. It won't last, it'll break. 3 or 4 laps later, it broke.
So how would you have described relationships between the Australian part of the Holden team and the English contingent at that point?
Well, you know, the Cold War lasted about 20 years, and this is about the same. Yeah, I think it's only just coming good now, to be honest. But yeah, it did. Clearly, I took that pretty hard that we had threw away a race on with something failing, which I knew would fail if it was treated like that. And but look, you got to get over that and get on. At the end of the day, the car didn't survive, and to win Bathurst, you got to have everything going for you, and I just got to move on.
In the team's 2nd year of operation, again they recorded a creditable 2nd place at Sandown, and in the big race performed well, even though the record books show their cars finished 6th and 7th.
Looking pretty good at this moment for the Holden team, Neil Crompton.
I just hope that it stays looking good for us, but Wynn's doing a great job at the moment, and the car looks to be well settled, and he's made up some ground on Larry. So all things being equal, the plan's unfolding nicely.
It was the Sierra era, and you know, the Commodores weren't the fastest thing that were homologated then, because it was running under the International Group A formula, and the Nissans were very strong. So that, you know, taking into account all the competition, that was a fairly good result, given that it was only in its 2nd start-up year.
Anyway, we're going okay. The main thing is to keep going round, and the Commodore will do that all day, of course. That's the beauty of it. It's over here that the thing doesn't feel too flash. Up to 4th, and now into Reed Park, and she drifts and bucks and jumps and leaps. You gotta be careful you don't touch these mongrel ripple strips.
You're finding them a bit of a problem?
Oh, they're lots of fun. See what I mean? Back to 3rd over Skyline. And it's been here that I've been locking brakes all the time, and I don't want to tear my front right to pieces. 2nd for the Dipper, 2 wheels, bags of understeer there. 3rd, and down to the elbow, trickle of power just to straighten it up.
We prepared 2 cars, and what we were racing against was the turbocharged era, the Sierras, and the Commodore just simply wasn't competitive. It couldn't be competitive against those sorts of cars. So they come 6th and 7th, and every car ahead of us was the turbocharged car. Yeah, on reflection, it wasn't all that bad, but as you say in the history books, it doesn't look very flash.
Looking at Wynn Percy and the Holden dealer team, they're in 8th position at the moment.
In 1990, Special Vehicles Racing was renamed the Holden Racing Team, and Wynn Percy took over as team manager. It was a period regarded by HRT team members as character building.
Wynn and Alan Grice very confident with this car. They say it can run it hard all day, and it's going to be interesting to see after 1,000 tough kilometres around here whether this thing's up in the top 5.
Yes, it was very hard. There was a lot of politics, and it didn't get off to a good start.
With the links to TWR, we had a pretty big expectation of ourselves, and there was a pretty big reputation to uphold. But we particularly didn't want to take it on ourselves in the 88-89 period, because we were very busy getting the HSV operations underway. So that subcontract effort to Larry sort of delayed us a little bit, but once we got there in 1990, we thought we were going to sort of give it hell, won Bathurst, and after that we didn't do much till about 1995.
Neil Crompton doing very well here with young Bradley Jones. Good to see 2 young guys given the opportunity by Holden.
Crompton gets a little bit sideways out of the cutting as he makes his way past one of the back markers.
In 1989, Wynn Percy and I were the foundation members of the actual Holden Racing Team, because in the previous year it was a Holden Special Vehicles operation that Tom Walkinshaw and Jeff Allam and Larry Perkins and various other drivers were involved with. So I guess I was there right at the start, and of course the team is nothing like that these days. It's a totally different deal, but I was probably there too soon, truth be told. But great relationship with everybody involved, and the I always knew when John first approached me about becoming involved with the team, and I think we talked about it at the time. I was driving for Peter Brock and he approached me in New Zealand, and I was driving for the mobile team in the little BMW, and he told me about what Holden Special Vehicles and Holden were going to do with the operation, and I knew straight away that it was going to be the real deal.
Holden Racing Team came to the mount with 2 new VP Commodores, and this man made sure he delivered the goods. Thomas Mazzera howled around the track in 2:16.028.
During this period, HRT had several different team managers, but one who would end up leaving a lasting legacy was the former Czechoslovakian driver, Thomas Mazzera.
It's a good scrap going on here. Glenn Seaton in the Falcon, dueling with the HRT Commodore Thomas Mazzera.
Thomas joined HRT after he had been with me a couple of years as a driver, and I think Thomas got there at a time they were still trying to shape the team in terms of the right engineers, and I think in those early days he still had not the right group with him, and but he was pretty pragmatic, and I think he got the message through to John Crennan, which bits were good and which bits were bad about the team, and yeah, team's always about a lot of good guys getting together, not just the odd one or two. And I think Thomas certainly helped direct, John Crennan on which is the right people and so on.
I know. I remember I had a sort of a good conversation with John Crennan about it, and back then I've been involved with the team for a couple of years on a full-time basis. Then I sort of, could see how it working or not working, and there was a couple of issues. So I put to John, well, yeah, I would do it, and under these conditions, if we do this and that.
15, Thomas Mazzera, who has done an excellent job all season.
Thomas had been driving for the team full time, as I recall, I think the end of 91 and 92, and I guess he could see some of the. There was a lot of change. There was the staff. It was a bit of a revolving door. As a driver, he wasn't happy, and I guess he wanted to make some. He felt there was some changes that could be made, and he had a very big conversation with John Crennan, and really he instigated some of those big changes. Obviously, I was asked to start back at HRT. And he was instrumental in getting Ronnie Harrop involved, and I guess we formed that little group that took it to the next stage of development.
We started to come to the belief that there wasn't too much security in motorsport, that the moment you sourced a part or a component that may have had a competitive edge, it was only a one race advantage because the leakages in motorsport were so enormous. So we were driven to perhaps try and capture a lot of that intellectual property and keep it in-house and make sure that not everybody could get onto it, and that took a little bit of capital expenditure. We did some deals with some big machinery companies and by and large started to bring ourselves in-house, together with, I might also in that regard, Ron Harrop, who also was a great initiative on, at that time, Thomas's part.
The main thing I wanted to do to set up our own sort of engineering and everything in here in Australia, which the communication between the UK and in here, like it's like no one was in charge, Then I think that was the bit of a problem for a team not to do what they should have been doing.
Australia's choice was therefore simple. A return to touring car basics. Holden against.
In 1993, the category was overhauled and the turbo era farewelled, leaving a competition featuring just the two brands Australian fans really cared about, Holden and Ford. In the Holden Racing Team, along with Mazzera, another person was having a major influence. He was the former Gibson motorsport engineer, Jeff Greck, who was looking to the future.
We tried to form a base for really a 3-year plan to, at the end of 3 years, come out where we were in more control of our technical destiny, and also in getting, good drivers in and basically building something that we could progress each year from that major step forward.
We prepared a blueprint in 1994 that sort of set out what we wanted to achieve in the course of the next 4 years, and part of that, like anything, was the people side of it. And Thomas Mazzera, Jeff, and various other people that we managed to recruit in, really formed the turnaround for us, and those people, most of them are still with us today.
HRT attracted a great deal of talk in 1993 when it put former world motorcycle champion Wayne Gardner in one of its driver's seats. Apart from a third placing at Bathurst with Brad Jones, the only other thing Gardner seemed to achieve at Holden was the nickname Captain Chaos. And he ended up leaving HRT in acrimonious circumstances at the end of the year to set up his own team. The driver to replace him was one that would sit much better with Holden, Peter Brock.
Right at the front, and Brocky getting a bit closer to the tail of the Coke Commodore. This is where he got, look at this remove.
Crompton holds his line, but he gives him enough racing room. A nice, neat move. He's hanging on the tail of the HRT Commodore.
That was a landmark. That actually then lifted us up to the, another run in the ladder. I'd started with Peter at HGT, when I was a kid, and he's an icon. If you talk Holden, you talk Peter Brock. I mean, back then it was the thing that really put us back on the map as far as getting that factory status out into our fan base, and it was a landmark decision.
And one back behind him is Thomas Mazzera, as Brocky says, "Come on, Glenn, you're holding up the whole show, son." That was a great move.
That was a high point. And look, at that stage, Peter was struggling enormously with his own team, and the mobile sponsorship that wasn't as comfortable as they would have liked, and a lot of the strengths that we had in our operation were his weaknesses, and vice versa. So it was really more as a real coincidence that we happened to bump into each other as I was driving into the track the year before, and there'd been a little bit of talk from Mobile that they'd like to do a few things, and an advertising agent guy by the name of David Mattingly had a chat to me. And anyway, one thing led to another, and Peter and I had a chat in our hotel room at Bathurst, and had a whole lot of what-if scenarios, and those what-if scenarios led to it all coming together where everybody was happy.
Gets it very, very sideways as they head up toward Honda Corner, sneaks down the inside of Dick Johnson.
When John indeed made contact with me and said, "Pete, how about it?" I actually thought I felt like coming home. It felt absolutely like I was sort of landing on my feet. Okay, Holden. I know all the people at Holden. I know the engineering people. I know all the designers. I know what they're sort of up to. And to be part of in the loop, as it were, with the works team was, I thought, this is going to be good.
Brock and Gardner on the front row, and off they go. Here goes Scaife between the pair of them again. Gardner loses the start, but Brocky wins it down on the inside, and Seaton up on the outside of Bauer as they head into turn number 1. And Peter Perfect gets there with Mark Scaife right behind him in the Winfield Commodore.
Brocky had an immediate impact for the team, and although he finished on the podium in the first 4 rounds of the championship, it was a breakthrough victory at Eastern Creek that meant the most.
The last touring car championship race that Holden won, I drove for my Holden Commodore at Surfers Paradise in 1986, and that was for Holden Dealer Team. And the very next race they won was at Eastern Creek in 1994, a long, long time between drinks. And I guess I could sit back and say, well, I won their last one and I won their first one, yeah.
The fans in the grandstand starting to warm to the idea as Peter Perfect comes down the front straight away, and it's checkered flag time. Peter Brock wins again.
It was fantastic. I mean, it was something the team needed, because it was all a new bunch of people that I'd tried to recruit, and there's nothing like a win after a hard slog to make it all worthwhile, I guess.
2 months away, and the hero from the Mount wins at Eastern Creek Raceway. Brocky belts them senseless.
I didn't realise the historical significance at that time, because I guess I've never been one to really think about the past too much, but when it was pointed out to me and I realised that the whole team culture began to shift, and what shifted was a self-belief, where they'd been knocking on the door, they'd been struggling a little bit, and when John asked me to come back, that also included 2 or 3 other guys, And slowly but surely, this whole culture that HRT now basks within really was started, and it was a fantastic time.
It was relief and it was breakthrough, and it sort of was something that little bit of confidence that everyone needed to perhaps prove to ourselves that we could win and shake the monkey and get on with it, and that really was the catalyst.
This is where the action is. Brock right on Scaife here as they head up toward Repco corner.
He's got the right line for the turn if he keeps it on hard. It's side by side into the right-hander, and Brock goes through to take the lead in the 94 Great Race with it sideways out of the turn.
If Peter Brock was an inspired, safe bet for HRT, the team's next signing may have seemed very risky. In a sport dominated by experienced old hands, there are a few raised eyebrows when a kid was put in charge of one of the big team's V8s. That kid was Craig Lowndes.
So Craig Lowndes under lots of pressure in his first appearance at Mount Panorama. Let's see if Lowndes takes up the challenge to bow and tries to hang in front. He'll be certainly determined. He's a pretty determined young guy.
By off chance, I nearly got run over by Craig in his Formula Ford, and he was all the things that you look for in a person. You know, he was brash, he was quick-witted, and he could drive a car fast. So we gave him a test, or we gave him a couple of tests, and you know, he was just so dynamic, and you could see all the young, because we were a young team and young people. You know, it really just inspired everyone to try and make use of his talent, and I guess guide him to where he finished at our team.
I always admired Craig. In fact, during 92, 93, we helped him with his Formula Ford open wheeler sort of exploits, because I knew his dad very well. He built my Tirana XU1s way back when, you know, in the 60s and 70s. So when Craig came along, it was a breath of fresh air, because it was very much the old guard, and we were running touring car racing those days, and all of a sudden this young kid came along and didn't know he couldn't do it. Very intelligent kid in many ways, Craig, because although he had the natural flair and natural talent to get out there and do it, which excited everyone, he was also wise enough to be able to sit back and think, what is the best way of approaching this big wide world of motorsport? How can I maintain my equilibrium and not get carried away with the ego trip that often motor racing can send you on?
The combination, Brock and Lowndes, was a great study in contrasts. They were referred to as the King and the Kid.
I reflect a lot on those times, and it was quite enjoyable to have, you know, Peter, who's the icon, and then I guess a baby icon, and they used to bounce off each other a little bit. And Craig certainly learned a lot from Peter, not only in driving but also in the way he perceived himself to the public. You know, he always gave time to our supporters, and was very good with media, and just generally a very good package. And I think Craig was young enough to be basically a big sponge, and he just took all that in. He had no bad earlier faults, so it was just a natural that he become the young icon. So we had the two of them, the young and the old.
It was as good a combination, I think, as you'd ever get. It was excellent, and I guess it was probably only surpassed a few years later by Mark Scaife joining the team, and where we had both Mark and Craig Lowndes, you know, as Peter was getting a little older at that stage. So, yeah, they were great combinations.
Look at Lowndes, has a look down the inside, a bit too fast to sneak down there for the young fella. He's being very cautious. You can see he's applying quite a cool head to this race.
By the 90s, I no longer expected to win every race I ever went into, whereas in previous times, I understood absolutely where Craig was coming from. As far as I was concerned, if I wasn't top of the timing sheets early on, I'd go, what's going on? Then I guess I became more philosophical. So when Craig came along, I looked at it and thought, Peter, you really do owe a lot to motorsport. And if this is part of the youth development plan that you've always dreamt about in recent years, well, hang on, get out there and actually do it. So I began to, I guess, act as a mentor for Craig and guys of that sort of age group from there on in. It was really a very good turning point for Peter Brock.
Craig Lowndes was fifth onto the track in the second Mobile Commodore, and what a lap he put together.
While many things were coming together for the team, the 1995 Bathurst race nearly brought it all undone. Craig Lowndes and Greg Murphy had qualified fastest in the great race, but their car expired after just 10 laps.
Which I think might be, out of it and walked away.
Dear, oh dear. Dramas here for 05.
The second car of Brock and Mazera lasted just 20 laps more. For HRT, it was a disaster, and Holden was reconsidering its options.
I thought in 95 we started to show some enormous promise, and I really felt we had turned the corner, because it was pretty much in keeping where I thought we were going to be in 95, but of course those engine issues that erupted at that Bathurst race was just put us back so far, and it was just so unbelievably gut-wrenching and embarrassing. And what was otherwise a reasonable sort of season as a platform for going into the following year was very much tarnished by those particular instances where, you know, we looked very silly.
It was probably nearly the end of HRT, to be honest. Holden had a very big think about whether they really do need a factory team that have had that sort of result, and the only thing that pulled us out of it really was one bloke at Holden, then Kevin Whale, and I guess a big piece of marketing research he had under his desk that said that there is something to motor racing success, and given that I'd always asked for 3 years and it was the end of the second one, we were granted a last year after 95.
The dominance of the HRT cars here today has been absolutely astounding, and they're doing it again, this time Brock leading Lowndes, but that likely to change before they get to the checkered flag, still 20 laps away.
If the 1995 Bathurst was HRT's darkest hour, the entire 1996 season was one of its greatest.
No trouble here, though, for Holden Racing, with Craig Lowndes and Peter Brock nose to tail through the last corner and line up for the checkered flag. They've done it again.
Even though we had a 95 Bathurst, which was disappointing, a lot of the things were starting to bear fruit in the technical side. So people looked at that race and thought, you know, it was all over, but it wasn't. It was just one component that failed. But there was a lot of other good stuff on the car. You know, the cars went well in qualifying. So we knew we had a good start for 96.
The grandstand stand and cheer as Craig Lowndes brings it across the line.
All we needed was just a little bit more luck, and we had a very torrid Christmas with some of the last little things we wanted to get done in the cars, and really 96 was a result of the hard work that the team had put in the first 2 years. So it wasn't just a one-year flash. It was certainly meant to happen, and we were very fortunate that we had two good drivers that year to carry the results through.
Out on that, he's going to go right up the middle. Here's a 1-2 form finish for Holden Racing Team.
Craig Lowndes won 6 rounds of the Touring Car Championship. Peter Brock also recorded a win and finished on the podium 5 times.
Nothing he can do about this guy. Craig Lowndes is absolutely cleaned up here.
To cap it off, Lowndes also won the Sandown 500 and the Bathurst 1000 with Greg Murphy. Lowndes and Brock finished 1st and 4th in the Touring Car Championship, giving HRT its first championship win.
The 1996 Shell Australian Touring Car Champion, 21-year-old Craig Lowndes.
We did not expect to accelerate to that degree by way of leaving the competition behind, but it was the 3rd year of our plan, and we were intending to sort of be a major championship threat at that stage, so a lot of it was falling into place, but not to the degree that we had such an enormous win ratio and podium ratio that was beyond any of our expectations, but we didn't mind it, we took it.
In 1997, Craig Lowndes went to Europe to try his hand in Formula 3000, and his place in the team was taken by another young driver, New Zealander Greg Murphy.
Smokes it up, and we have a great look here at the young gun, Greg Murphy, filling some very big shoes of Craig Lowndes from last year. And if you can follow his track record so far, it's pretty impressive.
And of course today, I think probably in terms of Holden profile, Greg Murphy would probably enjoy, if not the strongest, very close to the strongest fan base and recognition of being, you know, an incredible driver, and he was then. So, you know, all of those have been great selections.
Well, what a start to 1997 for Greg Murphy. He makes his way up towards the finish line, and in his debut run, well done, Greg Murphy. He takes out race 1 here at Calder Park.
Well, big shoes to fill. Again, you know, I'd only been in Australia. It was my 4th season in Australia, and here I was driving for the best touring car team in the country. And it was very special, alongside Peter Brock, who was, you know, back when I was growing up, was you know, a touring car legend and hero of Greg Murphy. And here I was, you know, driving alongside him. And then it ended up being Peter's retirement year, and it was fantastic. Unfortunately, the team, we had a few things go wrong that year, and the pressure to back up the year before for me was obviously quite high, and the car was very fast, there's no doubt about it. We had a fantastic piece of machinery. Unfortunately, we had a few mechanical failures and a few things go wrong, which really ruled us out of the championship. So probably to date, it was, you know, compared to 2003, which came very close to winning the championship in 2003. 1997 was, I think, probably my second best chance to date of winning the championship. So for the team and myself, I think it was one that went missing, but it was still a great experience.
And here's this great battle for 2nd and 3rd. It's been on since the 2nd green light we had up at Axton. Look at Murphy now, tries to get a bit of a toe, run down the outside, 270 kilometres an hour, and Murphy takes him.
Unbelievable. Greg Murphy has gone right around the outside. Now Russell wants a piece of the action as well. Coming right up.
No guts, no glory. Greg Murphy shows that there. Really quick run onto the straight. Look at Eagle muscling the back of the Holden Racing Team Commodore, leaning on him big time. Now he's got a good fast run out of the Southern Loop. They'll go side by side under the Foster's Bridge at 240 kilometres an hour. And there'll be a great braking duel as they come down toward Honda Corner this time. Perkins wants a slice of the action too. There's little rocks and debris across the circuit. Murphy now holds onto that position.
We took R&D probably a little bit further than what most other teams were, and we did have a few failures.
Whoa! Oh, look where he's heading. Goodness me, there's going to be a big accident. Murphy straight on.
Wow. Charlie,
well, I think something had to break in the car there. It is a very fast corner, as we know, but he just went straight off, never even looked like turning around the last part of the corner.
Some major steering problem or something.
People also got to bear in mind that when in again 97, that really set what happened in 98, 99 and 2000. So in the bad years, when there is things that come up, you've got to remember from bad, you're always learning about what happened. So, again, 97 unfortunately wasn't good for Greg, but it certainly got us back on track for the following year.
Last lap, last corner. Here he comes, the king of the road. From pole position, he wins race 1 at Oran Park. Well done, Peter Brock and his Mobile HRT teammate, Greg Murphy. Alan Jones.
Even though Murphy and Brock recorded 5 wins between them in the year, technical failures marred their season. Lowndes returned from Europe and displaced the unfortunate Murphy. Brock retired, and into the team came former Gibson Motorsport driver Mark Scaife.
John Crennan, myself and Tom had tried to lure Mark for a while there, and I'd worked with Mark obviously at Nissan, and it was I felt that it was a good move to have him come into the factory team to replace Peter. And we also wanted to maintain another good driver alongside Craig. So when he finally made that decision for the start of 98, it was again, I thought, climbing that ladder of bringing our brand even stronger and I guess creating the history that we wanted to fill out that history book with. Mark was a great choice.
Well, looks like Mark Scaife is well on his way. He's going to do it. His first ever Shell Australian Touring Car race win at Phillip Island here. Lowndes, he's not giving up though. Has a look on the inside. Will he pull out of the draft and have a run at his teammate? Here we come. He pulls out of the draft. Craig Lowndes. He's not going to have enough though. Mark Scaife does it.
It wasn't easy. Probably for 2 years I'd been chipping away at Mark at my beach home, in private where nobody knew, so that there wasn't going to be. So it took a lot to wear Mark down to entice him over, because he had a few concerns that he only wanted the best in respect to equipment, and he'd been at the absolute top, and so he gave it an enormous amount of thought. But when it clicked, it really clicked.
Good run by Mark Scape. We go on board now. He pulls up alongside Russell Ingall. And Russell has a look over. Scapey says, here we go. Side by side through the sweeper. Ingall's not giving up either. Look at this.
Ingall's on the wrong side, though. That's the problem.
240 kilometres an hour side by side. Boy, oh boy, that'll get the adrenaline pumping, but Scape was burnt by the other position. Ingall's coming back on the inside, but Scape covers his tracks again.
It's always a bit flattering, when you have inquiry like that. I was always a bit of a rap for Creno in those early days, because I saw how HSV had evolved into such a great business, and I could see that their race team was getting better and better. So we sort of first had contact in '94, and I'd won the championship for Fred, and there was a lot of chat about me going there, and we had really good meetings. And the thing that really impressed me about John Cronin was he said, Scapey, he said, I just want to have the best race team in Australia and build a bloody big fence around it. And I'll always remember those words, because they were very, very poignant at the time. And a year and a half on, I ended up going there.
Oval HRT Commodore of Craig Lowndes making a welcome return to Australian V8 supercar racing. He's looking to make it another dynamic year. He hasn't been quiet about his plans to get back overseas. That is his aim. Coming across the line, Lowndes wins race 2 here in the opening round of the championship.
Between 1998 and 2000, Craig Lowndes and Mark Scafe recorded 21 victories for HRT between them. They also won the Drivers' Championship, Lowndes twice and Scafe once.
There's a little bit of a sort of a Senna and Prost one, at McLaren, in that both of us were certainly capable of winning for the team, and it was a real battle for not only supremacy, but that level of competition took us to new heights.
Craig Lowndes turns up the heat.
I mean, I reckon that I roughly always had in my brain that when Lowndes and I were together, there was an extra 2 tenths in either of us, because we certainly pushed harder to beat each other than I've had, and that level of competition rose for everybody. The team guys on each car, they were trying to make small changes to make the car as good as they possibly could, and when that happened, it was fierce, but there was never any aggro. There was, we never had a bad word in that period of time, and we've got a very high respect for each other. There's no doubt that I think he's a very, very good driver, and the competition that we had going was one of the highlights of my career.
3 wins. The kid is the champ.
We had the best driver pairing of any team, because they were very competitive with each other. They pushed each other, and it showed in our results. We won the championship in those 3 years. And part of that was the competition between the two drivers.
As Lowndes enters the pits, and the Mobil 1 HRT car, the only one left in the race, is now in their change. Scafe in the car.
We had 3 years together, and it was very, very good. I mean, it was and probably when we went to Bathurst together, that was a great sort of culmination of Lowndes finishing with the team. I mean, we went there in 2000, and we had to win the series. There was no doubt that we had a lot of pressure on us to do that. It was a little bit of a disappointment that we didn't win it, because probably on the day we were the fastest car. And twice Lowndes and I had that going. We led by 30 or 40 seconds the year before, and it blew a front tyre and put us out. And then in the last year of Lowndes and I being together, Craig drove very, very well. We were up there and in contention, and ended up caught up in a battle with Neil Crompton and a couple of guys, and we had a bit of a bumping duel and had a flat tyre again. So it was sort of, it never actually come to fruition in terms of us winning together, but sort of it was almost deserving of such.
But I was going to say, very important for Jason Bright to put a stamp, I guess, on his own territory at HRT, and he's really...
When Lowndes left HRT, his place was taken by Jason Bright, who had previously been racing in the United States in Indy Lights. He proved a worthy deputy for Mark Scafe, winning at the Adelaide 500 in just his second race for the team.
Bright lines up for the final run to the checker, a little bit of oversteer on exit, and Jason Bright wins for the Holden Racing Team.
So this man, Jason Bright, he was there to take over the reins when his teammate faltered.
In addition to that victory, he also recorded wins at Wanneroo and Winton. as well as consistently finishing on the podium for the team.
I think Holden Racing Team are going to be very, very happy. They have won every round so far this season, but this one is a first. HRT will break a hoodoo right here at Winton. They've never won a round here, but today they do. And Jason Bright clean sweeps round 8 of the V8 Supercar Championship.
Scaife, he heads into the final turn. Mistral corner, the Holden Racing Team are on the wall as they await their driver, Mark Scaife. On the sidelines yesterday, today he greets the checkered flag. Last place to first. Well done to Mark Scaife, a storming drive.
After Mark Scaife won his first Drivers' Championship for HRT in 2000, he followed it up by winning the next 2 as well, in addition to taking 2 Bathurst Championships. His team seemed virtually unbeatable, and around the paddock, HRT became known as the Evil Empire.
Mark Scaife, a 1-2 for the mobile Holden Racing Team.
2002 in my career so far is the best I've ever driven. We had a great run. We won 5 rounds in a row at the start. To win the championship and win Bathurst, and that happened in 2001 and 2002, when the Bathurst race became part of the championship, it changed the way we approached the event. And the way to win the year was about not just winning the races, but being consistent. And to win that race as part of winning the championship, it made it more special than normal. It was a great season for us.
If they swing onto pit straight, Morris still holds that position in front of the race leader. And I'm sure he'll be shown a black flag soon if the officials follow through.
Scaife at the inside.
Scaife gets a good run out of there and takes it back.
And Jones is lining up as well. Dan has a second thought. So Mark Scaife back up front. Cameron McLean sticking to him like glue.
Mark, breathe.
The brand was starting to be everywhere in everyone's face. And I guess there was a bit of jealousy, and that's where the Evil Empire tag probably started. But in that, we thought we delivered a lot to our sponsors. We delivered a lot, certainly, to our fan base. All our supporters, week in, week out, that would turn up at our pit garage and want to see our drivers and I guess motivate us to go even better. That's the type of thing that we really were thankful about in that period of time.
To be labelled the Evil Empire was pretty tough, because it was just a business, and they were running a very, very good business that people wanted to see fall. Because everyone hates a winner, don't they? I mean, you want to see, you want to see the winners fall, so I suppose I think it was a bit tough that it was labelled that, but I think they liked it as well. It was like, a good way for people to I suppose get peeved off or pissed off about TWR and HRT.
Is, of course, the Holden Racing Team Commodore, Win Percy, Alan Grice.
For drivers and teams, the Bathurst 1000 remains the ultimate challenge.
Engines come up to rev, so they get off the line.
It always provides the most memorable moments in Australian motor racing, and Holden has always played a major part.
And here's the gap. The race leader, Mark Scaife, in the Nissan.
You can see the grand now. The Grice is pulled on the Nissan. Right up onto the tail of it again.
Even in its most difficult days, the Holden Racing Team managed to be a contender on the mountain. Its first win as HRT came in 1990 in a car piloted by Win Percy and Alan Grice.
What's happened here?
He's pulled wide there as they went into Forest Elbow. Now, if there's no problem with the car, he'll just shoot straight past again down the straight.
Well, all Grice wants to do is lead this.
Well, he's doing it.
So the Holden Commodore comes from behind to pass the Nissan GTR for the lead.
In the 1990 win at Bathurst, which was obviously in year 1, the strategy on the day was very important, as I recall, and Wally Story was the guy that was engineering that, and obviously 2 good senior drivers in there with Win and Alan doing a great job. So I think that at the end of the day they just had the right call in that motor race.
Under the bridge, coming down to the final corner. Checkered flag time. Crowd absolutely berserk. Last turn, checkered flag. How does it feel? 2 East champ, Alan Grice.
It's the best feeling I've had since 1986.
HRT didn't win at Bathurst in 1994, but it did figure in one of the most enthralling battles for first in the closing laps and heralded the arrival of a major new talent.
Going down to I've never seen a Bathurst race this close in my life. This is phenomenal motorsport.
If you were a scriptwriter, you'd write it like this.
So Lowndes keeps him watching brief, and he certainly doesn't seem to be struggling.
Oh, he's
up
not.
with John
This kid has got class written all over him.
The old campaigner John Bowe was in the lead when the rookie Craig Lowndes audaciously challenged.
And look at him tucking right under the wing of car 17. You couldn't get much closer than that.
7.83.
Oh, he's got it! He's put one on him up the hill. I didn't think it was possible.
Holden Racing Team, plenty of cheers and clapping the hands. This kid is dynamite.
A lot of the team were concerned about the way he was driving it. You know, he took a bit of a risk, but I was quite. I guess when I saw the move, it instilled in me that not everyone could do that move and pull it off, and he did. So I was more, I guess, wanting to let the reins go, and I thought, well, what'll be is what'll be. But certainly it was impressive, and it got everyone to stand on the seat. That's for sure.
The battle for pole came down to the two men who have dominated practice and qualifying.
For HRT, so many things came together in 1996. Bathurst was one of them, and the two in the driver's seat were the youngsters, Lowndes and Murphy.
What a combination these two young men have made, Greg Murphy and Craig Lowndes.
It was my second time there in a V8 supercar, and I felt a lot more comfortable in the car that year, and Craig had obviously won the championship by then too. And we went to Sandown, and in terrible conditions in Sandown we won the race there, which was absolutely fantastic for the team and to carry on from the success of the championship. And then basically we were given the favourite mantle when we went to Bathurst that year too, so which was pretty unnerving for me, considering that, you know, I'd only done the one race and I was going there with a lot of pressure on from all sides, because Craig had won the championship, he was the golden boy, we'd won Sandown, and basically, you know, it was his year, and we were given this favourite mantle, so there's a lot of pressure on me to perform in that race, because it was expected that Craig Lowndes should win that championship.
Just imagine how difficult it is in that spray, Gary. The drivers have been talking about it all morning. Just so much water coming up from these tyres, really blurring their vision, so a great advantage for Craig Lowndes.
We went to Bathurst to be conservative. We knew we had a good shot at it like everyone else, but, you know, it was atrocious conditions. And I guess, you know, we were all serious because we wanted to desperately win it, and Craig took it in his stride. You know, he just was driving in the wet like it was dry and taking risks, and we were on the radio trying to, you know, what we thought was some of the risks were too great. He took the challenge the way he wanted to do it, and he wanted to win driving fast, and he wasn't so much concerned about those wet conditions. And I guess at the end of the day, when he was standing on the podium, I thought, you know, if he only knew how much back in the pit bunker that we were all basically 6 hours on edge, watching him drive the thing around, having a laugh and a cackle, was quite a thing.
Well, it's been a record-breaking season. Listen to the crowd as Lowndes brings it across the mountain for the final time. 46,000 fans, a lot of Holden ones amongst them, cheering this young man home. He's only the second man in touring car history to win the Australian Touring Car Championship, Sandown and Bathurst in the same year. The only other man to do it was illustrious teammate Peter Brock, twice in 1978 and 1980. So he's following his footsteps. Look at the nerves of Greg Murphy. So, braking for the final time through Caltech's chase. One more corner to come up, as Lowndes will get on that middle pedal, brake and swing on to pit straight. The crowd cheering him on, 46,000 fans. He gives a wave, and he points it up toward the checkered flag, and Craig Lowndes wins the 1996 AMP Bathurst 1000. And surprise, surprise, the crew are ecstatic.
Unbelievable. It's, you know, I compare it to my two children being born, you know. It's just an elation you can't believe. And you have to appreciate the race and understand the race and have the respect for the race is what I have had. You know, I used to watch it as a kid and you know, living in New Zealand all those years and watching it the first weekend of October and just dreaming of, you know, of racing at Bathurst. I mean, that was it. For living in this part of the world, Bathurst was the mecca of motorsport. So to be able to, in my third time at racing at that circuit, to win the great race was quite something. It was quite amazing.
Let's not forget that the Shell Championship Series is on the line here, right now. Craig Lowndes and Cameron McConville must finish in the top 4.
In 1999, HRT was once again strongly in the mix. Craig Lowndes, looking for the placing that would secure him the driver's title, was paired with Cameron McConville. His teammate, Mark Scaife, driving with Paul Morris, was also hunting for glory. They would end up second and third, securing the championship for Lowndes.
Here comes those two HRT cars. What a good-looking finish this is, eh?
And as they slow down and finish side by side, Craig Lowndes is the 1999 Shell Championship Series winner. Second and third, and there he is. What an unbelievable record for the kid. 3 championships he has contested and 3 championships he has won.
Victory on the day went to former HRT driver Greg Murphy with Stephen Richards. HRT had to wait till 2001 for its next Bathurst win, courtesy of Mark Scaife driving with Tony Longhurst.
Across the top for the final time, listen to the roar.
Holden fans erupt. Mark Scaife bringing it home for the Holden Racing Team. It's been a dominant performance. They've set the pace throughout the day, been in contention when it counted, and now he's going to bring it home.
Across Holden skyline for the final time. There was talk about not enough fuel to get home. Well, Bradley Jones is still there, but some 3 seconds behind. It is as good as over. Mark Scaife, and look at the car. There's not a nick, there's not a dent, there's not a scratch on it. We said that they were playing a conservative strategy earlier. They didn't challenge any passing manoeuvres. They let people get through. They didn't want to fight. They didn't want any conflict, and they played a smart race. What a sophisticated strategy. What great driving from Scaife and Longhurst. This is one that they will remember forever. Through the chase for the final time. Mark Scaife under brakes. The sniff of the champagne is right there. Through past one of the Lansville cars. They know that they have got it. And Mark Scaife says, we have done it. We have done it. He comes across the line. He's never run a fucking supercar. He has now. Scaife and Longhurst do it at Bathurst.
Thanks, boys. That was just unbelievably good.
Car number 1, gentleman Jim Richards. You can plug him into a Concorde, and I'm sure he'll bring it across the Atlantic for you. He is
the next year saw HRT with a very special lead driver combination for the great race. At the end of the turbo era, Jim Richards had famously given the crowd a piece of his mind when he teamed with Mark Scaife to win the Enduro in the Nissan.
I'm just really stunned for words. I can't believe the reception. I thought Australian race fans had a lot more to go than this. This is bloody disgraceful. I'll keep racing, but I tell you what, this is going to remain with me for a long time. You're a pack of arseholes.
2002 would see the same driver combination triumph, this time for HRT.
Basically, when I was with Gibson's early on, Scaife and I were together. Now, I left sort of Scaife, you might say, or Gibson's to drive with Steve. And I drove with him with Valvoline for 2 years, and that obviously allowed someone else to come in and partner to Mark. And then Mark went to HRT, so there was never really an opportunity to have a drive. And as the years went on, I continued to get drives in other teams. But when the opportunity arose, and Mark sort of said to me, listen, what about coming and joining us? So I was delighted because, you know, in that particular year, it was 10 years since we'd won it together. And I suppose I was pretty pleased with the way I was driving at the time, and the rest's history.
That was a great touch, yeah. And I think the guy that got the biggest boost out of it and was Mark himself, you know, because he has always, whenever anyone asks him the question, you know, who do you look up to most, he's always said Jimmy.
And Mark Scaife is going to do it for the Holden Racing Team. Jim Richards will collect his 7th crown. Mark Scaife will collect his 4th individual crown. This will be their 3rd Bathurst win together. They did it in 91 and 92 in a Nissan, and now they're going to do it in 2002. And isn't that fitting that Mark Scaife goes around Peter Brock? And Mark Scaife will go back-to-back at Bathurst. He secures another Australian touring car title.
Well, to be honest, it was brilliant. It was one of the highlights of my career so far. There's been a few of them, but I think that was better than the first ones that we won in the GDRs, mainly because of the time frame between the wins and the fact that 10 years after we'd won, I'd come back and I hadn't been in that class. So it was a personal achievement for me as well as a team thing for HRT, but I was chuffed.
The winners, Mark Scape and Jim Richards.
I think anything that I've done in terms of winning at Bathurst, that was the sweetest, because Jim and I are great mates. I mean, he's 20 years older than I am, but we could be the same age. We're great mates and we've always got on fantastically well. He's the most competitive guy that I've ever been around. All that Gentleman Jim stuff is a funny sort of cultural thing that's happened, because he's a beautiful guy away from the track, but on the track he's determined, he's an absolute mongrel, he'd do anything to win a race, which I learnt a lot from. And of all the guys in my career, I've learnt more from Jim Richards than anyone else that I've ever been around. So for us to win together 10 years after we won in the Skyline was just fantastic.
They've just black flagged Scaife, so he's going to have to come in.
In 2003, Mark Scaife came so close to making it 3 in a row before the stewards black flagged him in the final stages because a damaged rear door wouldn't stay shut.
There was no danger to anyone. I can't believe it. It's been like that for 15 laps. You read what you think about it.
You can feel the steam coming out of Jeff Breck's ears, boys.
For those at HRT, it reminded some of another one that got away. Peter Brock's last race at Bathurst in 1997.
Peter Brock to make it number 10, to win in his last competitive event.
Again, it was another torrid day. We actually run the Young Lions that year as well, so our workload had increased. And we basically had 3 cars fail again at Bathurst through crashes.
No! Looked like Lowndes was running wide. Oh, I just saw the bottom of that as he went off and he has slammed the wall big time. Craig Lowndes in the 15 Mobile HRT Commodore has hit big time.
Peter was going very well. It was his last year and he had a very good chance of winning the race. He was teamed up with Mark.
Aboard the Mobile Holden dealer team for the Tickford 500 at Sandown, put the car on pole position. He's been scintillating throughout qualifying. He's got a problem. He's got a problem. I just thought he had a drama there. He's slowing down.
There was a fire in the engine compartment and I unfortunately had to make the decision of whether the car could go back out on the track. Given what had happened the previous year with Alan Jones and his team, very bad fire, I pulled the car out of the race and I guess that upset the whole team and especially Peter because it was his swan song. So yes, I do regret that decision, but I made it at the time given the grounds of safety and I'll live by my decision.
It was close, and if ever one got away from us, it was that weekend because we had a car, and Scaife and I were firing, we were a mile ahead of anyone and it was looking pretty good. And what went wrong was like a weird thing. It wasn't as if the car exploded, it was just like a minor thing that impacted on the fuel injection system, and as Jeff said, they pushed the car away and there wasn't much we could do from there on in. I felt in a sense that, hey, that was a hell of a ride. And if you're gonna go out, that wasn't a bad way of doing it. It's better than being 45th on the grid and struggling back there somewhere. So I was pretty philosophical about it and thought, well, we could hold our head pretty high, we were running pretty good.
In 2004, 7 years after his retirement, HRT announced that once again there would be a special pairing at Bathurst. Peter Brock was asked if he'd like to have one more crack at a more fitting finale. A 10th win in the great race.
The cars are beautiful. The team is absolutely the most professional team in the country. Strangely enough, I mean, the core group of guys that looked after my car in '97 are still the same group of guys who are involved these days. So I thought, I know what I'm getting into. I know who these people are. I know what sort of job they can get. I know that going up the mountain is going to be absolutely berserk with people having huge expectations. Peter Brock, HRT, Bathurst, it'll be fabulous. So I sat back and thought, this is a great adventure and I'm going to do it.
He's still driving the car very well. He's good at Bathurst, obviously, and for the team, it's a pretty nice way for one of Australia's sporting icons and one of our motorsport heroes to finish their career. And the guys are pretty respectful of that, I think.
And we've got a problem here with, of course, the Plato car. Just
Rocky's return to the mountain was not an auspicious one. During the opening laps of the race, co-driver Jason Plato experienced a mysterious vibration from his front wheels and then glanced a wall, damaging the car. As he limped back into the pits, he was hit by John Clelland's Ford. For Brock, it meant he didn't even get to drive in the race. But as ever, he was philosophical.
Well, Brocky, that's a big disappointment, and this was supposed to be your last race. Is it going to be now?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, look, if anything, it has made me more steely determined, because once things like that start going for you, you've got to start saying, I think, that there's a new direction in life for Pete Brock, and that's not behind the wheel. I thoroughly enjoy racing. I love this place, I love this race, and I would have loved to have got out there and gone around and done all those things I've done all those years ago, but you got to be philosophical about it. I feel very much for Jason Plato and for Mark Skaife. Skaife gave me a terrific opportunity of saying goodbye, and Playson feels like he's deprived me of you know, any opportunity of getting out there and blasting around. But the fact remains, that's the way it works in motorsport. It's always been a cruel sport. It's always been a challenging one. It's always been a sport that causes you to dig a bit deeper, to overcome those disappointments so you can move on, to be confident enough to be successful the next time out.
As one door closes, another opens, and the need to change with the times has been clearly understood at HRT. In the mid-90s, the V8 category was dominated by drivers who had been racing for decades. John Crennan and Jeff Grech at HRT decided it was time for new blood. They orchestrated a changing of the guard.
A lot of the supporters and the backers and the investors thought we were, biting off a little more than we were going to chew by way of throwing some people in the deep end so early, but that really was another, probably to me, the most satisfying initiative we've ever taken, and then that manifested itself in '97 with the formation of our Young Lions team. And today, I think there's 4 or 5 guys of that recruitment program that are, right up there as some of the stars of today.
And that is Craig Lowndes, the man who won the Australian Touring Car Championship. A phenomenal, a blockbuster performance in 1996, just 22 years of age.
They're responsible for, the huge change that went through when Craig Lowndes got into the V8 supercars, and that basically, made the road for young guys like myself, my brother Rick, and Jeff Grech and John Crennan are solely responsible for both myself and my younger brother's careers, bringing us both up through the Young Lions, and that really got us to where we are.
As we continue to watch Murphy, the 26-year-old who resides in Melbourne now, 2 times Tickford 500 winner, 96-97 with his old co-driver in Craig Lowndes.
It was taking a big risk to have a 21-year-old or 22-year-old taking over one of these cars, which was only thought that these older guys that had been around for all these years were capable of driving at the pace that was required. So Jeff Grech had the foresight to say, listen, we need to start looking ahead, because sooner or later these guys aren't going to be around, and what are we going to do? So he went ahead and talked Tom and John into, give me a chance, give me a shot at this. And once Craig came along, it was proved that he was obviously capable, and then it was time to say, hey, well, let's keep going along this path. And fortunately for me, I was sort of timed my run into Australia at a good time, and obviously did the right things at the right time to be noticed, and next thing I was a part of it as well.
Greg Murphy has just put in a 1:13.71. The Murph is on fire.
There's no doubt that's almost a prerequisite for modern motorsport and the way that good teams run. If you think through the last 20 years, and you just said there's Glenn Seaton, Mark Skaife, Craig Lowndes, Marcus Ambrose. In the midst of that, every 4 or 5 years you get a new young guy, and to have that in our game is almost mandatory. We've got to try to do that, and you're not going to get every one of them to be a superstar, and the number of real superstars is probably pretty few and far between. So for us to bring some people along, the Todd and Rick Kelly scenario has been very, very good for us. Todd's shaping up as a great young guy, and he's certainly clever enough and determined and committed enough to have a great career in this game.
I'm still waiting for the big highlight. I'd like to win Bathurst with Scafie. That's the major thing. That's what every driver wants. And you know, a championship would be huge. But all the little, you know, a round win and a pole position, for me they're good. But it's, you know, it doesn't really hit you hard. I'm just waiting for that big Bathurst.
In 2003, the long association between Holden and Tom Walkinshaw Racing came to an end when TWR went bust in Europe. A new owner for HRT was needed. The person who stepped forward to take HRT into the future was Mark Scaife, taking on the tough role of team owner and lead driver.
He's had to assemble a group of people around him that are going to be able to take a bit of the weight off his shoulder, and that's been difficult early on, but he'll pull that together. And but I think in the absolute long haul, at the elite level of sport, you know, if Mark does do it, it will defy the odds. So, you know, I'm sure that Mark's got his master plan in place that when he steps back from all this, that he'll probably breathe some sense of relief. But I don't think it's going to deter him from being at the front end pretty soon.
I think that the future is very, very bright. I mean, there's not another race team in this country that has a 10-year agreement with Holden to be the factory racing team. So when you consider all the key elements, you're the factory team for Holden, you have a 10-year agreement, you have a golden era of Australian motorsport now. It's the most competitive and best that it's ever been, with a cast and people and an infrastructure that's probably better than we've ever had. I'm looking forward to the next 5 or 6 years. They'll be crackers.
I hope it continues for forever, really. I know things things don't stay the same, but I really do think the brand will stay there. And there has been some change, especially in the last 18 months. But the change is just superficial. It hasn't changed the culture of the brand, and it's a bit like the MCG. It'll always be there. And I believe that a lot of people are wrongly saying that, well, the history has taken a turn as far as HRT, and I think they're quite wrong in that analogy. I think there's been some changes beneath it, but the culture is still there. The culture of winning, the culture of technical excellence will always be there, and hopefully forever.
The grandstand stand and cheer as Craig Lowndes brings it across the line.
It's going to be a mobile HRT 1-2. Congratulations, Greg Murphy and Peter Brock. Last lap, last corner. Here he comes, the king of the road. From pole position, he wins race 1 at Oran Park. Well done, Peter Brock and his mobile HRT teammate, Greg Murphy. Craig Lowndes makes it 2 starts, 2 wins today at Oran Park. Things are looking good for the Mobile 1 HRT outfit.
But the 1998 Shell Australian Touring Car Champion, Craig Lowndes.
As they await their driver, Mark Scaife. On the sidelines yesterday, today he greets the checkered flag. Last place to first. Well done to Mark Scaife, a storming drive. Take nothing away from the Mobile Holden Racing Team, a 1-2. Wonderful scenes as Jeff Grech, Natalie Lowndes and all the team hang over pit wall as they await Craig Lowndes and Mark Scaife, a 1-2 for the Mobile Holden Racing Team. Great drive.
Scaife takes out race 1 at the V8 Ultimate.
Last turn, checkered flag. How does it feel? To his champ, Alan Grice.
And Mark Scaife will go back-to-back. At Bathurst, he secures another Australian Touring Car title.
But I want a big Sandown welcome for our new champion, Mark Scaife.
But the Holden fans are happy with this as Mark Scaife passes the Holden signage, turns 8 and 9, half a lap to run.
Well, this is the thing we were talking about, Holden Racing Team, the key to their success, 4 of the last 5 championships. It's not so much that they don't make mistakes, it's just that they make a lot less than everyone else.
Across the top for the final time, listen to the roar.
Holden fans erupt. Mark Scaife bringing it home for the Holden Racing Team. It's been a dominant performance. They've set the pace throughout the day, been in contention when it counted, and now he's going to bring it home.
They know that they have got it. And Mark Scaife is, we have done it. We have done it. He comes across the line. He's never run a bucket supercar. He has now. Scaife and Walters doing it Bathurst.
Thanks, boys. That was just unbelievably good. Well done, Scaife.
Mark Scaife wins race 1 narrowly from Jason Wright. Kelly, though, is in the lead. He's clear of that trouble, and he will take the victory.
Great drive, mate. What an excellent effort.